Small steps, big impact. Ladies and gentlemen, you see, life is not made up of grand gestures or monumental decisions. It's built on small, deliberate steps. Tiny, seemingly insignificant actions that, over time, create something extraordinary. I know this because I've been there. I was once at the top of the skiing world dreaming of Olympic gold. But a single moment, a single fall changed everything. In the blink of an eye, my entire future was rewritten. And in that moment of devastation, I had two choices: stay down or rise. I rose. But it wasn't all at once. It was one small step at a time. I started over. I took a small step into a world I didn't fully understand, the world of high-stakes poker. Every game, every hand, every decision was a tiny step. But those steps led me to something much larger than I could have ever anticipated. They led me to the high tables of Hollywood where the stakes were higher, but the impact was greater. I was playing a different kind of game, now one where every small move mattered. And let me tell you something, when you're betting against millionaires, every little detail counts. A small mistake, it costs you. But a small victory, it can change your life. That's the power of small steps. You may not see the result immediately. You may wonder if it's even worth it. But trust me, those tiny moves create momentum. They create growth. And before you know it, you're looking back at the path you've traveled and realizing you've already crossed a mountain. Don't underestimate the importance of a single step. It might be making that tough call, taking that risk, or simply getting out of bed when the world tells you to stay down. It might feel small, insignificant. But mark my words, it will have an impact. Look at me, I took small steps out of ski slopes into poker games, into a courtroom, and today I stand here not because of a single leap, but because of thousands of small steps that took me where I am. So don't wait for the perfect moment to make a grand move. Start small, take that first step, and trust that it will lead to something bigger than you can even imagine. Because every big impact starts with one small step. Small actions lead to big outcomes. Life is built on small, deliberate steps. It's not about grand gestures, but the accumulation of consistent actions over time that create significant change. Embrace setbacks and keep moving forward. Just like Molly's skiing career was derailed by an injury, setbacks are part of life. The key is to rise from them, even if it means starting over with small steps toward a new direction. The power of incremental progress, every step, no matter how small, matters. In Molly's poker journey, every hand and decision built towards greater success, showing that tiny, consistent moves can lead to big changes. Don't underestimate the impact of small decisions. A single small action, like making a difficult decision or taking a risk, can have a far-reaching impact. These moments add up and shape your future in ways you can't always predict. Trust the process and keep going. Progress might not be immediate, but trust that every small step you take contributes to a larger journey. It's the small steps that build momentum and ultimately lead to success. Life isn't about waiting for that one monumental moment to make a difference. It's about the quiet power of everyday decisions and actions, the ones that might seem insignificant in the moment, but add up over time to shape the course of your life. Every day, we have countless opportunities to take small steps that move us closer to our goals, no matter how distant they may seem. Think about it, you don't climb a mountain in a single leap. It's a journey, one small step after another, each bringing you closer to the summit. Those steps may be difficult, they may seem repetitive or even trivial, but each one is necessary. It's the same with any goal, whether it's personal growth, career success, or achieving something extraordinary. The process is built on the consistency of showing up, doing the work, and pushing forward, even when the results aren't immediately visible. These small actions compound in ways you can't always predict. Each decision, each effort, no matter how small, creates a ripple effect that leads to larger outcomes. It's like planting seeds in a garden. At first, you don't see anything, but over time, with the right care and attention, those seeds start to grow and flourish. The key is to keep planting, even when the results aren't immediate. In the poker games I ran, it wasn't the grand moments that made the most impact. It was the small, calculated decisions, the ability to read the room, to take those little risks, and to make the right move at just the right time. It was about understanding that consistency was the path to success. It was 1,000 small decisions that built the foundation of what I created. And that's where the real power lies. Setbacks are an inevitable part of life. No one is immune to them, no matter how talented, ambitious, or driven they may be. They can hit you when you least expect it, and they often come when you're feeling your most confident. For me, it came in the form of an injury that ended my Olympic skiing dream. One moment, I was on track to achieve everything I'd worked for, and the next, everything was taken from me. That moment of loss could have broken me, but it didn't. It taught me that setbacks don't define us, they refine us. They force us to pause, take a step back, and evaluate where we are. The question isn't whether setbacks will come, it's about how you choose to respond when they do. You have two choices: stay down or rise up, and rising doesn't always mean jumping back in at full speed. Sometimes it means taking slow, deliberate steps in a new direction. When my skiing career ended, I had to start over. I didn't have the luxury of continuing on the same path I'd envisioned. I had to take those small, sometimes painful steps into unfamiliar territory. But those steps, no matter how small, were still progress. I started fresh, built a new skill set, and found myself in an entirely new world, one that, at the time, seemed completely out of reach. The road was uncharted, but each step forward was a sign of growth, of strength, and of determination. Setbacks force you to reassess your direction, but they also give you an opportunity to learn, to adapt, and to come back stronger. They teach resilience. The key is to keep moving forward, even if it means reinventing yourself along the way. The goal is not to avoid failure, but to embrace it as part of the process. Life is a series of starts and restarts, and sometimes the hardest part is giving yourself permission to begin again. Starting over might feel like a step backward, but it's not. It's a pivot, sometimes even a small one, that can open doors you never thought possible. The real strength lies in finding the courage to keep moving forward, one small step at a time. In any journey, progress doesn't always come in giant leaps. Most of the time, it's made up of small, almost imperceptible moves that, over time, accumulate into something substantial. I learned this firsthand during my time running high-stakes poker games. At the table, every hand dealt, every decision made, every player I interacted with was a tiny piece of a much bigger puzzle. No one move, no one win would have ever amounted to anything if it weren't for the countless decisions that built up to it. Each small, incremental step was essential in building the overall strategy. When I first got involved in poker, I didn't know all the rules. I didn't understand the dynamics of power and bluffing at the highest levels, but I learned that success wasn't about having the perfect strategy all at once. It was about understanding that every single hand was a chance to learn. Every decision, no matter how small, taught me something crucial. Sometimes I'd lose a hand, sometimes I'd make mistakes, but it was through those small missteps that I learned how to improve. I knew that if I kept applying what I learned, each game would be better than the last. The key to success wasn't looking for a dramatic one-time win, but rather making tiny, consistent improvements. In poker, every decision mattered. Should I raise the bet? Should I fold? What's the tell on this player's face? The more I played, the more I began to recognize patterns, anticipate moves, and read people. These weren't big, dramatic moments of brilliance. They were small moments of clarity that, when added together, created a much larger advantage over time. This concept applies to every area of life. We often underestimate the power of incremental progress because we're looking for that one big breakthrough. But true success is built on the foundation of small, consistent efforts. It's the tiny steps we take every day, the dedication to our craft, the habit of improvement, and the patience to wait for those small wins to add up. It's about the long game. And while it might take time, these small changes ultimately lead to a much greater transformation than we could ever imagine at the outset. In poker, those incremental decisions eventually led me to success more than I ever could have achieved with one big win. Each small move was part of a greater whole, and over time, that greater whole became something far more powerful than the sum of its parts. It was in those quiet, consistent moments that I found my path to success. And that's the power of incremental progress. It might not seem like much at first, but it will lead you to places you never thought possible. Sometimes we think that making a difference requires big, bold moves, decisions that stand out, that change everything in one dramatic moment. But the truth is, often it's the small decisions, the quiet choices we make in the heat of the moment, that have the most lasting impact. These decisions might not seem significant at the time, but when you look back, you realize that they were the turning points that shaped your entire future. Take my journey, for example. In my poker world, there were countless moments where I had to make difficult, seemingly small decisions. Some days I'd have to decide whether to take a risk on a hand or whether I should fold and walk away from a potential loss. Each of those decisions, no matter how small they seemed in the moment, had the potential to impact the direction of my entire day or even my entire career. There were times I had to decide whether to trust someone, whether to take on a bigger risk or to play it safe. None of these decisions were easy, but every one of them contributed to where I ended up. In life, we're constantly faced with small moments that require choices. Maybe it's whether to speak up when you feel uncomfortable or to take a chance on something new, even though you're not sure it will pay off. Maybe it's a decision about how to spend your time or where to invest your energy. Every single one of these choices has the potential to set you on a new path, to move you closer to or further away from your goals. The thing is, you don't always know what the impact will be until much later. At the time, it may just feel like a decision you make to get through the day, but those moments accumulate and shape who you become. There were times when I had to trust my instincts even when the odds didn't look good. I took risks, I made choices that others might have thought were reckless. But those small, often tough decisions, those were the ones that put me in a position to succeed. They were the moments that defined my path. They didn't seem like much at the time, but in hindsight, they were the pieces of the puzzle that came together to create something far bigger. We can't always predict the impact of our decisions in the moment, but that's what makes them so powerful. They build on each other, they shape our habits, and they change the course of our lives in ways we may never fully understand. Sometimes it's the risk we take to speak up, or the courage to take that next step, that leads us to our greatest opportunities. Never underestimate the power of a small decision. It may feel like a tiny ripple, but you don't know how far that ripple can travel, how many lives it can touch, or how much it will change your future. In the end, it's not just the big choices we make, but the collection of small, seemingly insignificant ones that create the most profound changes in our lives. In any endeavor, the hardest part often isn't the starting point, it's the process that follows. We live in a world where we're conditioned to expect quick results, where success seems like it should be immediate and easily attainable. But the reality is that progress isn't linear, and it certainly isn't instant. It's a slow, sometimes frustrating journey, filled with setbacks, doubts, and days when it feels like you're not getting anywhere at all. But that's when you have to trust the process. When I started running poker games, I wasn't immediately the expert. I wasn't the one calling all the shots or commanding the room. At first, I was just figuring things out, learning the ropes, making mistakes along the way. There were days when I questioned if I was on the right path or if the sacrifices I was making were worth it. But those moments are part of the journey. I had to trust that every small step, every little victory, no matter how insignificant it seemed, was contributing to something bigger than I could see in that moment. Trusting the process means understanding that not every step is going to feel like a giant leap forward. Some days will be full of small, mundane actions that don't seem to get you closer to your goal. But what you're really doing in those moments is building momentum. Each step, each day that you show up adds to the foundation of something larger. It's the repetition, the consistency, and the dedication that eventually propels you forward. There's a certain beauty in this kind of progress, though it's often the things you least expect that take you the furthest. When you trust the process, you allow yourself the freedom to focus on the journey, rather than the immediate destination. Every small move, whether it's a minor adjustment, a tiny improvement, or even a failure, is part of the larger picture that's unfolding. You might not see the results immediately. You might not feel like you're making any headway in the moment. But over time, as you continue to take those small steps and trust that each one is building towards something greater, the results will show up. And when they do, you'll realize that those moments of uncertainty, those quiet days of hard work that felt like they weren't moving you forward, were actually laying the groundwork for everything that came next. The key is not to rush the process, not to get discouraged by the lack of immediate progress, but to trust that each step you take is a piece of the larger puzzle. Success doesn't happen in a single day, or with one big move. It happens in the quiet moments when you keep showing up, doing the work, and believing that those small steps will eventually add up to something bigger. That's how momentum is built, and that's how true success is achieved.